Hello, I'm Miss Williams. Welcome to Your Favourite Teacher. Today, we will be looking at the brain and the eye. These two topics are found only on the separate science biology qualification and are not examined in the Combined Science Award. Both of these organs are related to the topic of homeostasis and response, and we will look at each in turn. We will start with the brain. The brain is the part of the central nervous system together with the spinal cord. The brain is made up of billions of interconnected neurons linked together via synapses, small gaps allowing neurotransmitters to link different regions and sections together. The brain is important because it is responsible for complex behaviour and complex actions. The brain coordinates everything in the body. The spinal cord can respond to simple external stimuli, but the brain is needed for actions of any complexity. For your exam, you are required to be able to identify different regions in the brain and identify their different functions. You will need to identify the cerebral cortex, medulla, cerebellum, and spinal cord on a diagram of the brain and describe their role in humans. The cerebral cortex is the outer section of the brain, folded and wrinkled looking. The cerebral cortex is responsible for memory, intelligence, consciousness, and language. The cerebellum is at the back base of the brain and has a leaf-like appearance. It is the region responsible for the coordination of muscles and movement. The cerebellum receives information from the sensory systems, the spinal cord, and other parts of the brain, and then regulates the movement of the body. The cerebellum coordinates voluntary movements such as posture, balance, coordination, and speech, ensuring that the actions taken are accurate and appropriate to what is required. The medulla is also referred to as the medulla oblongata and is responsible for unconscious activities of the body. It is responsible for things like breathing rate, heart rate, digestion, swallowing, vomiting, sneezing, and blood vessel dilation. Some of these actions can be controlled by conscious thought, but will take place regardless of you thinking about them. The spinal cord is the tail-like structure exiting the base of the brain. The spinal cord connects the brain to the peripheral nervous system and allows information from the sensory neurons to reach the brain for interpretation and action. Apart from being able to label a diagram, you also need to know how scientists can study brain activity and the consequences of these investigations. Scientists need to use a combination of direct and indirect observations in order to study the brain. By studying patients with brain damage, scientists can determine the function and role of different regions by seeing what the effect of damage in that region has had on the person. For example, if a section of the cerebral cortex was damaged and the person was unable to speak, then you would know it is responsible for language. Studying individuals with brain damage can help lead to the development of new treatments. Scientists can also use electrical stimulation to see its effect on the brain and body. They do this by placing tiny electrodes into the brain tissue and giving a jolt of electricity. By observing the effect of this stimulation, scientists can determine what role that region plays. Finally, MRI scans can be used to examine the brain in action. An MRI, or magnetic resonance imaging scanner, can view the activity of the brain without using any intrusive surgery, like using electrodes or using a patient with brain damage. MRIs can allow scientists to study healthy patients with minimal risks. The risks when studying the brain are significant, as it is a complex organ and tiny changes in the organ can lead to decreased function, loss of abilities, memory, or speech. If surgery is used, for example using electrodes, there's also the risk of infection, and the consequences of infection can be severe. The eye is the other organ that you can be asked about in the biology paper. In the exam, you will need to be able to label the eye and describe the function of each of the components of the eye. The eye is a sense organ that detects light and colour and uses this to create an image of the environment. Here we can see a diagram of the eye. The sclera is the outer wall of the eye. It is tough and responsible for supporting all of the other components in the eye. The cornea is the transparent outer layer found at the front of the eye that allows light into the eye. The cornea refracts light as it enters the eye, bending it. The iris contains muscles that change the diameter of the pupil. The iris controls how much light can enter the eye by controlling the size of the pupil. The iris has circular muscles and radial muscles which work in tandem to control how much light can enter the eye. In very bright light, the circular muscles contract and the radial muscles relax. This causes the pupil to become very small and restricts the amount of light that can enter. In dim light, the opposite happens. The circular muscles relax and the radial muscles contract, making the pupil bigger, allowing more light to enter. The pupil is the hole or gap in the centre of the eye through which the light passes. The lens is found behind the pupil, behind the iris, and is responsible for focusing the light onto the retina for interpretation by the brain. The lens can change shape based on the actions of the ciliary muscles and the suspensory ligaments. This is called accommodation. Accommodation is the process of changing the shape of the lens to focus on near or distant objects. To focus on a near object, the ciliary muscles contract, which slackens the suspensory ligaments. The lens becomes fat or curved, and this refracts the light more. To focus on distant objects, the ciliary muscles relax, which pulls the suspensory ligaments tight, making the lens narrower, thin, less curved. This refracts the light by a smaller amount. If the lens cannot refract light by the correct amount, a person would end up as being either short or long-sighted. Long-sighted people are unable to focus on closer objects. This occurs because the lens focuses the light at a point behind the retina. Using a convex lens, a lens which is fatter at the centre than at the sides, will allow the light to focus within the eye. Long-sighted people are said to have hyperopia. Short-sighted people are unable to see distant objects. This is because the light focuses before the retina. You can correct this by using a concave lens, a lens which is slimmer in the middle than at the sides. Short-sightedness is called myopia. Apart from wearing glasses to correct vision issues, there are other alternatives. Contact lenses can be used, which are very thin lenses that sit on the surface of the eye and are shaped to compensate for the faulting focusing. Contact lenses can either be hard or soft lenses. Hard lenses are less comfortable but carry less risk of infection, while soft lenses are easier to wear but carry a higher risk of infection. Laser eye surgery is another option which can be used. Here, a laser is used to vaporize tissue and change the shape of the cornea. Slimming the lens will make it less powerful and correct short-sightedness, while changing its shape so that it is more powerful can improve long-sightedness. Using laser eye surgery requires precision and care, as the changes will be permanent and, if done improperly, could leave you with worse vision than before. Finally, there is replacement lens surgery. Here, the natural lens is completely removed and replaced with an artificial lens made of clear plastic. Replacement lens surgery carries the highest risk of all methods of eye correction, as it requires surgery inside of the eye and potential damage to the retina. So, to summarise, the brain and the eye are the two organs that can be asked on the separate biology paper. You need to be able to label the cerebral cortex, the cerebellum, the medulla, and the spinal cord in the brain. You need to be aware of the ways of researching the brain, such as MRI scans, using patients with brain damage, and using electrodes in the brain. You will need to be able to label the eye, including the sclera, the cornea, the iris, the lens, and the optic nerve. You need to know that long-sighted people have a lens that focuses light behind the retina, while short-sighted people have a lens that focuses light before the retina. Long-sighted vision is corrected with a convex lens, while short-sighted vision is corrected with a concave lens. There are alternative treatments such as laser eye surgery, corrective lens surgery, and contact lens. We have been looking at the brain and the eye for your favourite teacher. Thank you.